All right, thank you all for joining us this evening on this presentation on CMMC Level 2 compliance is another case study that we're doing as part of a just general series of case studies on companies that have been able to achieve CMMC compliance, looking at the key success factors that enable them to really achieve that goal seamlessly as feasible and as efficiently as possible. So we as Actors Pros are taking a lot of the lessons for many of the clients that we work with, the leadership within the clients we work with, taking a lot of those insights and bringing them, making them available to other companies interested in becoming CMMC compliant. Obviously, for those who are not aware, it has become a business imperative for companies that provide services to the defense industry base to be compliant with the new Code of Federal Regulation around protecting CUI. And the biggest beneficiaries of this presentation will be anyone, any company, any leadership within any company trying to be CMMC compliant. So obviously, it also benefits the fact that assessors or folks that are performing readiness assessments for all the clients supporting the defense industrial base. So I think there's definitely a lot of value in this case study, and lots to really digest, to capture, and to definitely share with the community as well. So within this presentation, we're going to provide some kind of practical steps, some of a few things we've seen, and obviously, hopefully, coming out of this, you have somewhat of an idea of what the good blueprint really looks like. As you've seen on there, we call this presentation the ascent, right? Ascent to the top of the mountain. CMMC is challenging enough, but getting the right folks to help you, to guide you as a shepherd or chaperone is incredibly important to help accelerate your journey. Obviously, making it easier for you, and doing so, you're making fewer mistakes, and doing so, you're able to achieve compliance as quickly as possible. So there's a case study on how AeroShield, a fictional company, a 200 employee DIB supplier, secured its data and definitely the future of its business. All right, so let's move on with the presentation here. So again, to give us context in terms of this supplier and how CMMC comes into the picture here. This is a company, as we mentioned here, is AeroShield. We got 200 employee. They have one sole manufacturing site. They tier two subcontractor for U.S. military aircraft. So they definitely work with prime contractor to secure government contracts. And the products they actually offer is avionics circuit boards, wiring harnesses, and control models, all being manufactured here within the United States. To bring about the manufacturing of those products, or for the physical manifestation of those products, they need design. Design models being sent to them from the prime contractors that have obtained the contracts, the bill of material. So they do ship around for parts. That information itself is deemed CUI. Obviously, we have test procedures, fault assurance testing around the products, the firmware, the operating system, on how the products really operates is all deemed CUI, and that flows through the entire ecosystem of providers to the aircraft's ecosystem within the defense industrial base. And one of the reasons why they need to be CMMC compliant, obviously, the upcoming DoD contracts mandates CMMC level 2 certification aligned with the NIST 800-171 controls. And that's important. They need to satisfy all the 110 controls because the new contracts come into play requires that. So the stakes are really, really high. I'm also from a business perspective, when you think about revenue, the ability for them to make money, the ability for them to secure contracts, the ability for them in certain situations to maintain ongoing contracts. So failure here is really not an option. It's critical for business survival. And in addition to this as well, it is also important that we note that there's also a legal exposure for any type of misrepresentation on the data that's been uploaded to Spurs on the sake of their cybersecurity controls. Firms are required every year to do that. So it's one thing for you to say, well, you comply with the regulation. There's another thing for you to say, well, you comply, but you were misrepresented, right? Failure to accurately states your controls could lead to false claims act, which is could be a major legal risk for the officers within that very thing. So let's get started here. So and before we get to the top of the mountain, we need to know exactly where we are. We're still at the very bottom of the mountain when you think about it. So our starting point here is really the current state of AeroShield's environment. AeroShield environment, they do a good job, work. They have a goal to supply uh, great services to their prime contractors and also to the Department of Defense. But the existing approach they have from a technology perspective or how data is being handled isn't quite optimal to be CMMC compliant. As you see on there, it's being optimized just for convenience and for low cost as much as possible. Where say a situation where there's a CUI data sprawl over the place, you see how systems kind of wire together in a spaghetti form, creating technical debt. As you see on here, that AeroShield hasn't really done much of an investment in the technology. It's being kind of kept to the barest minimum to keep the lights on. Unfortunately, because of incur those debts, trying to transform the business to become CMMC compliance is going to take some time, but it's not impossible. So looking at a few key characteristics here, the bread and butter, they use cloud, they use email, Office 365 for productivity. They have a few servers on-prem, they use security tools, right? Basic antivirus files, they have nightly backups. They lacked advanced, EDRs, endpoint detection response, same solution. A lot of legacy systems, a lot of outdated, systems that run OT or IoT capabilities as well. The processors, because they've been around for quite some time, you have long-standing employees there. Everything was kind of a tribal knowledge. The turnover was very, very low. It's kind of more of a family business, so there's a lot of tribal knowledge documented in people's head. So they lack documentation and repeatable processes around certain things, at least most on the IT side. And also had a small IT team. Whose primary goal was to just, uh, keep the lights on, essentially. They didn't really have any uh, major focus on cybersecurity and how they needed to actually protect CUI. So with the regulation, obviously there are a lot of challenges they will have to overcome to become CMMC compliant. They will have to, in fact, think of it as remodeling or think of it as rebuilding. Some organizations we've spoken with, their leadership have had to really build the entire technology stack from the ground up to become CMMC compliant. Some had to refactor the application code bases. So somehow to completely outsource a lot of it, right? So many have to, in fact, purchase new environments just for CMMC compliance. So you have a few firms selling your turnkey, enclaves that you can actually put your data in, and that comes with a lot of the controls. So those things are really valuable. But in the situation here at Shield, we have to be very, very thoughtful around what needed to be done. Obviously, taking a lot of risk and cost into consideration. So some of the hurdles they have to overcome include kind of costs and timeline. They want to invest that, so they now have to rethink the business and it's also justifying new investment in tools and services. Obviously, consultants really comes into play as well. Supply chain as well has been under hurdle. So ensuring subcontractors handle CUI was also important for them because as a subcontractor, they had to hand off some work to other subcontractors as well. So it's important for them to ensure that everyone was compliant. They had limited resources, a very lean IT staff that was really whose original task was to just keep the lights on, right? The scope itself was very uncertain because they historically have not done pretty much a good job in terms of tracking uh, CUI data within the ecosystem. So there's been a lot of spillage over time that has to be cleaned up. There's been a need for them to kind of really refocus how data should really flow through the system. Not to talk about the legacy OT infrastructure that had lacked some of the capabilities to secure CUI, including being patched, including being able to really assess vulnerabilities, including being able to even run, EDR solutions on them. So think about Windows XP, think about Windows 7, all those systems that run on those data software are really challenging to deploy modern security capabilities on them. So that was also a natural challenge. And many of those devices, interestingly, had to kind of really also manage CUI data. Obviously, we talked about informal processes, a lot of tribal knowledge, and people that have been there for a very long time. So let me things a little challenging. Just think about the change in behavior, right? With these people, and the fact that they have to rethink how they did business. There's always that natural pushback working with employees that have been around for a very long time. They're not probably always as open to change. So dealing with all the challenges and that hustle and kind of negotiating your way through what is right was also a natural challenge. So the Blueprints Foundation. So how do you tame this whole spaghetti or think about it, see them like snakes, right? How do you tame the entire environment? And really, it is really understanding, making it very clear that the NIST 800-171 was designed to be information centric, right? It was designed to understand what CUI is, right? And also understand how CUI is controlled throughout the entire life cycle of the uh, of the data itself. Excuse me. So before the uncontrolled environment, we've shared this uh, diagram before. You can see how things are kind of wired. It's concerning. There's always the CI spillage is not clean, it's not neat. There's always a huge risk of CUI spilling to other parts of the businesses that it shouldn't at all, or potential situations where CUI is contaminated with other types of information. So after we went in and helped the firm with to propose it's kind of a scoped enclave. That enclave include, leveraging, the best of breed architecture that's available out there, leveraging the best platform. In this situation, leveraging Azure, Microsoft 365, GCC High. We able to actually secure engineering servers, kind of isolate them, segment them. We're able to also segment the shop floor. So we built what we call this kind of hybrid environment, right? And obviously segmented that off, firewall that off the corporate, network, right? Or the corporate LAN, so that the corporate LAN could be completely out of scope. The CUI enclave is really to focus on applications that are being scoped for the assessment. So scoping becomes incredibly very important there. Understanding how data flows becomes very important there. So you see, being the CM, I appreciate the benefit of having a real well-developed, data flow diagram, a well-developed enclave diagram, a well-developed, network diagram. So the big takeaway here is kind of this two parts, enclave strategy. One, class segregation, migrate all email on the entire platform to Microsoft 365 GCC High. 365 GCC High is FedRAMP, is able to narrate a lot of the cool stuff, good controls that comes out of that platform. Takes away some of that heavy lifting you have to do on-prem. You have to secure, and then the other part is really segmenting the network, right? So we have to create a secure on-prem network segment using firewall VLANs for the engineering servers that we had to use, and as well as for the shop floor systems that handle CUI. Now, in as much as those systems, in fact, cannot be integrated with modern security tools, modern security protocols, we're able to leverage what we call the physical people controls to really manage the flow of CUI within that environment. So, what were the kind of the core pillars for success? What are the core tenets that made this whole initiative successful? And we can't stress this enough, right? And it really comes down to really, people, process, and technology. In this situation, we won't start with technology. Technology. Picking the right technology partner is incredibly important. And depending on the size of your business, obviously, when it comes to business, you're optimizing for costs as well. So, and also making sure, and all the costs, also optimizing for effectiveness, optimizing for long-term relationship. So it is important that you pull all that into context, not just focus on the cost, but making sure you're building integrating the right technology that works for your business, that's really truly fit for purpose. So in this situation, we leverage Microsoft 365 GCC High. Obviously, the cool stuff that comes out of it, including FedRAMP High compliance, comes with natively with MFA authentication, data residency, which is key. It has logging capabilities. For the endpoint detection and response, SentinelOne has a great offering. So we leverage their, AI-driven threat detection tools. Good thing here is with SentinelOne here is that it is FedRAMP High authorized platform. So we've seen there are some of those controls as well. And also has controls around the USB device, portable USB devices, and has autonomous incident response. So obviously, when you think about incident response, detection and response, SentinelOne does a great job, and you're able to feed a lot of the data from SentinelOne into the same solution as well. With the firewalls, again, enclave strategy. So we segmented the environments and the domains that kind of host CUI. We apply strict egress filtering. Obviously, hardening VPN with no split tunneling with MFA. We also deploy intrusion detection responses across the different networks. Data protection, obviously, encryption is key there. We had to leverage FIPS 140-2 validated encryption at rest and transit, AES-256 encryption, centralized login, and all the fun stuff that comes with tools like BitLocker and secure protocols and the same solution. So data in transit, data at rest for the VPN technology, for data at rest as well, for data storage within Microsoft GCC High, within that job platform. Was actually, FIPS 140-2 validated. So, and again, just a quick deep dive into what you get out of GCC High. Obviously, a tremendous game changer. One thing, you get compliance out of the box with GCC High for the most part, as part of that shared responsibility model. And the good thing about GCC High and the Azure here is it has access controls, it has incident response, it has DLP rules that can be applied to it. It has audit capabilities as well. Obviously, when it comes to systems, communication integration, data at rest, and transit, we're kind of really encrypted. So provide all the necessary security tools and components. And unlike commercial that tends to follow the sub model, right? 250, 365 from where other countries are able to help provide support for Microsoft's on commercial. When it comes to 360 High, there's data sovereignty and it's managed by only screened US personnel. So again, coming to tools, GCC High solve a lot of challenges there. And again, the same with SentinelOne, we get a lot of benefits. One of the core benefits here is really helping us shift from that passive prevention, just using kind of basic antivirus, to one or real-time threat detection response. So this goes beyond just CMC. This is really how do you protect the organization? How do you uh, effectively and efficiently control the threat before it become, major and become severe. So it's really speed to detection, speed to obviously response, and SentinelOne really accelerates a lot of that with a lot of its AI tools. So you get the benefit of quick instant response. You also get benefit of media protection. You have to disallow the use of USB devices on laptops that used to really manage CUI. And also, we also get audits and accountability, from the logs that are being generated by SentinelOne. So when you think about a modern forward-thinking tool, SentinelOne, at least in this particular use case, checked all of the boxes from being compliant, being aligned with some of the compliance initiative, and also satisfying some of the kind of the core security requirements from an incident response perspective, right? So which again, going back to picking the right tool for your own situation. Obviously, there are other solutions that exist out there in the marketplace. Microsoft in fact has an endpoint detection and response solution, but SentinelOne in this use case, I haven't compared, some of the benefits of pros and cons with other security tools. Check the box in the situation. Yeah, so pillar one, pick the right technology and make sure that technology is defensible. In pillar two, it was important that we break that kind of institutional and tribal knowledge approach to running the business. We had to really get to the point where we had to really begin to take a lot of the knowledge of the people and begin to put it on paper. And in fact, we think the processes that was used to really manage data and to run IT operations within this very company. So it was essentially re-engineering the processes, essentially, and carrying the people along. So as part of the engineering process, it was important for us to develop an SSP plan, which is essentially a blueprint, a massive document for really how you, in fact, manage information security. It describes, obviously, the system boundaries, your assets. It shows us the data flow diagram, and how, again, how all the 110 controls are in fact implemented to protect CUI data. So when it comes to this SSP plan, again, it comes down to the mapping, comes down to traceability. So the SSP plan must map to your access control policy, your acceptable use policy, and all the policies you have. Those policies must map to NIST 800-171. So it's important that you have to trace up and trace back. So you can, in fact, the way to see the CSSP plan is to see it also as an hierarchy, where you have the SSP plan, you have all the policies and maps to, you have all the policies and maps into all the 110 controls available through NIST, right? So the key outcome here was kind of a transformation. Now we have a more systemized process around how IT, operations and how cybersecurity operations actually works within AeroShield. So it transformed the informal tribal knowledge into kind of repeatable, consistent, and kind of auditable standard operating procedure. So which was success, right? And the last pillar here, which is pillar three, how do you engage your people? From just a general cybersecurity perspective, people tend to be the weakest link. So it's important that you ensure that you raise their level of situational awareness and give them sufficient context into why you do certain things. So obviously, the employee has to go through the more formalized security awareness training. That's kind of really table stakes, bread and butter. So training on phishing identification, social safe internet users, social engineering, and all the potential threat vectors that could lead to an employee to become an internal threat to the organization. And the employee does actually have to also understand CUI, one. They have to go through CUI training, how CUI comes into play in their different respective roles. So whether they're engineers, whether they're architects, whether they're production staff, or whether they're leadership, whether they're program managers, really, if you're going to handle CUI, you have to go through proper CUI training to be able to really protect that, to see how they play the role in securing the data in itself. So to go into all the training, how to properly, mark CUI, how to handle CUI, how to store CUI, how to transfer CUI. Within the new enclave, they have to pick up some knowledge on other new security tools, which was also important. And again, we also have to make sure the employees are really prepared for any eventual cybersecurity attack, and really how will they respond. So institution, they have to, engage in drills and simulations. They have to go through that on kind of a yearly basis. So you have to create scenarios around phishing attacks that could lead to malware and make sure that everyone knew what their roles are. So from the point of when the instance was identified to the point where the roles are clarified and really builds team confidence before a real crisis, right, occurs. Ensure everyone was really, really trained. It's no different from what you get from a fire drill. This really helps build kind of resiliency. Everyone had, their names and the numbers on their jerseys. They know when the number is called and what they need to do. It became more of a, kind of team building activity when you think about it. So that was good for pillar 3. So how did we get to the summit, right? They all go here. So how do we get to ascent, right? How do we get to the top of the mountain? And that's where your Sherpa, your readiness professional or your readiness specialist helps you with that. So as part of we helping this company, we help to provide, obviously documentation is important, right? So uh, we have to provide the C3PO with the complete SSP plan, the policies and procedures, the network diagrams, ensure everything ticked and tied together, ensure everything there was traceability across all the documents. That's always very, very key, very important. In fact, we have to ensure we avoided generic policies, writing procedures. We have to write procedures that reflect how the work was actually being done within the environment. So that's really important. And we also had to really engage the workforce, right? So to get to the point where the IT staff were able to demonstrate their technical controls. So they have to be trained on that. And the engineers also had to be to explain their CO handling procedures as well as part of the interviews and demonstrations. So getting those folks really ready was important. And when it comes to tracing the evidence, right, it's also key here. There needs to be properly mapped. It has to follow the hierarchy model. So in a situation we have to trace the SSP plan to obviously the policies to the NIST controls, and the NIST controls back to the SSP plan. So, and talking about the SSP plan, it's important that we document everything, document the data flow diagram. So in this situation, the assessor was able to trace the data flow diagram and have the company walk them through the entire process, right from secure receipts or secure ingress of the information and the storage of the data in the Microsoft GCC High, and to the point where the data is being used on the shop floor using USB drives or sanctioned USB drives, to the point where the data is being destroyed based on NSA's approved shredder. So all those things have to be put into consideration. So that's where obviously your readiness specialist helps you with a lot of that. And the results, obviously, which is a goal here, the company was able to successfully meet all CMMC level 2 compliance requirements. 110 over 110 validated practices, right? They got their award, and that was really transformation for the business. So they were awarded level 2 certification, which is valid for 3 years, with the scores recorded in the DoD scores database, which is EMAS. So if we take a step back, yes, we've gone through the whole exercise. we've essentially transformed the business, more so leveraging compliance really as an accelerator. And what does that really mean? Obviously, it was a business imperative that they were compliant. What does that translate into in dollar terms? Yeah, with that investment in compliance, they were able to drive growth and continuity, right? Similar became less of a going concern for them. We protected millions of dollars in DoD contracts, opened doors to new contracts, actually. It gave them, competitive advantage, gave them an opportunity to differentiate themselves with a new investment. And beyond that, we want us to also look at it through the lens of national security as well. We have to protect controlled unclassified information from threat actors around the world. In fact, as of uh, last recording, I think the amount of cost of data or intellectual property loss to threat actors within the defense industrial base was like about 600 billion. So definitely, there's an economic and also national security reason for us to really protect CUI. So anyway, within the company, we have to harden security posture, protect both government CUI and the company's own intellectual property. And you can also see the benefit of operational maturity. So when it comes to people, standard operating procedures, how we do work, ways of working, right? Following a better blueprint, streamlining the operation, ensure everyone had clear rules and responsibility when it came to cybersecurity. So we able to establish a secure where culture, where cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. Everyone's part of that line of defense with streamlined IT operations, with clear, documented, and consistent procedures. And many areas we're lacking in IT because of technical debt, we're now brought forward. So this became also a modernization transformation initiative, which was really good. And we were able to hire more employees as well. New ways of really thinking about technology and also upgrade a platform where they could really modernize those applications that they had and provide not that better services to non-government organizations. So you force them to really rethink their business model to see how the investment in this technology really is able to elevate their application and platform profile where they could build better experiences and also serve other industries. So which was actually a good thing. So not only was it beneficial for them from a business perspective, when it comes to the channel serving the government, well, holistically as an organization, you open other path of revenue capture for them. So your field guide as a shepherd shepherd within Access Pros, right? There are four key success factors we've seen in businesses really that able to leverage this kind of blueprint. One is, it's important that you secure executive mandate. It's no different from any other compliance initiative like ISO. Executive support is really transformation. You need that top level, driver to get you forward. So the examples we have to treat CMMC as a strategic business priority, not just an IT project. It goes beyond just a product. It's a program, right? So a new way of doing business. So it's important that you integrate it into your the very fabric of the organization. So we've secured that, secured the budget and the time and the leadership and direction from senior leadership. Senior leadership really had to make certain decisions themselves. They had to make trade-off decisions. They had to refocus and reprioritize investments, rationalize investments into areas that was going to move them forward. And also one of the other success factors here is scoping aggressively. It's important that you're very surgical when it comes to your scope. Being sure you know exactly where your CUI is, how it flows in your environment. Make sure that you apply the controls to the flow of CUI data within your environment. So important you define your boundary and define your scope. Failure to do that just leads to unnecessary work, leads to waste. So it was important that we focus on that. And also, it's also important that we build a compliance-ready tech stack. First one is important that you are leaning more towards applications that come with a compliance already built into them. You want to take away much of the heavy lifting. So you want to leverage Microsoft or Azure or any other type of FedRAMP application so that you're able to have them absorb some of the controls and only focus on controls that you are responsible for. So it becomes part of that kind of shared responsibility model, right? And so be able to leverage that providing them, access to more secure controls and also accelerating their path towards compliance. And again, for here is aligning documentation reality. There needs to be traceability. I can't emphasize this enough. Traceability, traceability, traceability from your SSP plan to your policies to the lease controls and back to the SSP plan. And also making sure that everyone was aligned. So in fact, every control must have an owner that can speak to it intelligently, thoughtfully, and explain exactly how that control really operates, right? So your policies must reflect what you actually do, and your systems must be configured to enforce your policy. We can't say that enough. It's important to use mock assessment and practice drills to find and fix disconnects before a formal audit. So readiness is incredibly important. It's important to ensure you do a dress rehearsal. So I mean, also taking a step back here, when we think about CMMC, what are some few lessons learned, right? Here is one where, CMMC is a new standard operating system, right? It's become part of the culture. It's not just a checklist, not a one and done exercise. And it has an opportunity to be better. We can definitely improve as we proceed. This is the first attempt for many organizations. Over time, the whole process becomes more refined. So we monitor, we refine, we improve, we rinse and repeat, we streamline the process, always moving down the path of continuous improvement. So the goal here is not to pass the audit. The goal is to integrate security into the very fabric of the organization. By integrating it, it enables the organization move forward faster and better. So some of the key actions for sustained maturity, you got to establish governance, I mentioned that. You got to monitor continuously. When it comes to your SIM solution, your EDR, from an incident response perspective, you're always assessing for risk, for vulnerabilities, for potential areas where threat actors may want to exploit those vulnerabilities. It's important that the organization is also very adaptive, being glued to the changing threat landscape. So a successful CMMC program transforms. Again, it's not a project, right? It's not a beginning and a end. It's a program. It's a repeatable process. Transforms cybersecurity from a compliance burden to a lasting competitive advantage. So it's important that the mindset, right, the mental framework for our it's the one where there needs to be a paradigm shift in terms of how cybersecurity has been seen. So this is two different worlds. AeroShield before and AeroShield after. AeroShield before, just bringing everything back together, for us here. They had this unclassified data sprawl. CUI data was all over the place. It wasn't traceable, right? Data was being mixed with all the sorts of data. So there was a lot of data contamination. They had legacy informal process. There was a lot of tribal knowledge, data manufacturing equipment. It worked for them. No one ever questioned it. They had limited resources, small IT team that could only do so much. Because the other goal of IT was seen as a support function was to really, keep the lights on for the most part, right? So they were overwhelmed when they saw the list of controls. Again, when you think about CMMC, there are over 110 controls for about 320 objectives. So it's kind of really overwhelming when those requirements are pushed down to you. Obviously, there's a difference between night and day where they are now. They engage a readiness specialist like us to really help them get them to the top of the mountain. So it's kind of a solution here, which is isolate the sensitive data. It comes down to isolation to reduce the overall cost. deploying compliance-ready technology so you can absorb, they'll be able to absorb a lot of the controls. So you have to deal with, takes away a lot of the heavy lifting, and it's important to drive that cultural change. You document your processes, document your SSD plan, implement company-wide cybersecurity training, robust training on CUI handling, storage, and fact transfer, training from an incident response perspective, right? And also making sure that leadership was really engaged. And doing that, what happened, right? Well, it opened tremendous opportunity. Number one, they got the badge. Um, they have the right to play within the defense industrial-based contracts. They secure millions in existing contracts. They were to gain competitive advantage. They were in fact able to leverage the new modernized platforms they invested in and we're able to use that to kind of pivot into other types of businesses as well. So which was really, really great for them. So they achieved more than the business outcomes they actually planned for because they took a step on being compliant. So your journey to a successful assessment starts with making that decision truly, and that decision to be prepared. A successful CMMC assessment is the final step in a long journey of preparation, right? So you need to get the scope right, writing your detailed SSP, addressing the controls, get leadership support before you get to call the C3P also perform your assessment. It's absolutely crucial that you go into the assessment being ready, believing that you're ready to go and you have all your I's dotted and all the T's crossed, right? Before the assessment. So if you're ready to be assessed, obviously you have all the details out there in CyberAB. You can contact the C3PO and engage with them. If you need help, get them to the ascent to the top of the mountain, get them ready. Be sure you have all your docs in a row to help accelerate your progress as well. And be sure to contact us at info@accesspros.com. All right, thank you for joining us for another case study. Definitely looking forward to the next one. Please click subscribe. If you'd like to hear more about CMMC case studies and cyber initiatives. Thank you.